Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Welcome to Concordance. Today I would like to introduce Mr. Larry Miller, and he was appointed the first chairman of the Jordan Brand Advisory Board in January 2019. Under his leadership, Jordan Brand has grown from a 200 million basketball shoe company to a 4 billion athletic footwear and apparel firm. Larry helped found the Jordan Brand at Nike in 1999 before becoming the president of the Portland Trail Blazers NBA team from 2007 to 2012, after which he returned to the Jordan Brand. Larry graduated with honors from Temple University in 1980 and earned an MBA from LaSalle University. Larry recently wrote a book, Jump, My Secret Journey from the Streets to the Boardroom, which he tells his journey from his childhood in the violent streets of West Philadelphia in the 1960s to becoming incarcerated and then rising to the heights of the American sports industry. Please join me in welcoming Larry Miller.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Mr. Miller. Tell us about your childhood and growing up in Philadelphia.
So there was a lot of great comments about my career and what I've done as far as my work career, but what that doesn't talk about is the things that I went through before that. I grew up in the streets of Philadelphia. Come from a large family, 8 of us, 8 kids. Mother and father both there, so I had didn't have a broken family. I had both parents there. And from like all through elementary school, I was like a straight A student, good kid, the teacher's pet kind of kid. And up until around the time I started to move into what was called junior high school back then, the street started to pull at me, and I started to, give into the whole gravity of the street life. And what happened was at a certain point, impressing people in the street became more important to me than impressing teachers and parents and people that were trying to get me to do the right thing. And so I ended up getting involved in a gang. I joined the gang and was in and out of trouble. When I was 16 years old, I shot another kid, killed him. I was charged with second-degree murder as an adult. I ended up, my parents were able to scrape together money from family and friends and were able to get me an attorney. And I was sentenced to 4.5 to 20 years. Did the 4.5, got out, knocking around, in and out of trouble, back and forth. At a certain point, I ended up going back to jail for a number of armed robberies. I had like 6 armed robberies. And again, I've been fortunate and blessed in terms of sentencing and how my court stuff worked out. I ended up, out of all of that, I ended up getting sentenced to 4 to 10. And the parole board could have actually made me do the whole 15.5 years from my first charge. The way it worked in Pennsylvania is, so when I got out, I did the 4.5, got out and had 15.5 years of parole. The way it works, if you get arrested for another crime, they can take away your street time and I still would have had 15.5 years again. So they could have made me do that before I even started the new sentence on the armed robberies. But they only asked me to do 9 months out of that. So I ended up with 4 years and 9 months. And I know I'm going a little further, probably answer some of the questions you have there already. But as when I was back there the second time, or when I was back there that time, the last time, they had a program at the prison I was at where you could take college classes inside the jail, and then you could qualify to move to these trailers that were parked outside the wall. And you could live in those trailers, leave every day and go to school, and just have to be back by 8 o'clock at night. And when I heard about that program, I was like, that's how I want to do my time. If I could do my time living in those trailers instead of behind the wall. So I figured I would qualify for the program so I could get into the trailers. And that's what I did. I ended up qualifying for that program and went to Montgomery County Community College in Pennsylvania while I was in the program, got my associate's degree. And then I transferred to a halfway house in North Philly and started at Temple University, got my bachelor's degree from Temple, and then started my career with all the stuff that was talked about earlier. But it was, it wasn't like I didn't go through a bunch of stuff and I didn't, I was in and out of jail from the time I was 12, 13 years old up until 30. And when I got out the last time when I was 30, that's when I really was able to change my life and kind of, move forward and start the career that was talked about earlier.
I do want to go back a little bit to something that you were saying earlier about growing up. I watched some previous interviews of you, so I kind of heard a little bit about your story. Tell us a little bit about your family and your support system growing up.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate that, I was told from a young age by family and extended family that I was made to believe that I could do anything I put my mind to. My uncles used to tell me all the time, yeah, the boy's smart, he's gonna be able to. And I know a lot of my friends didn't get that. They got just the opposite. But I was fortunate enough that I had supportive family that really kind of, like I said, motivated and inspired me and made me believe that I could accomplish, anything I put my mind to. And I still believe that to this day. That's kind of what I think has gotten me to where I am, is the fact that, they instilled this in me that I feel like anything I put my mind to, anything that I focus on, I can accomplish.
And I remember you saying something in a previous interview about the stigma attached to the wrong crowd, being, in with the wrong crowd. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I was really young, I was, straight A student, good kid, but it was like the lure of the cool guys. I wanted to be that cool kid, that cool, and to me, school back then wasn't cool. Being smart wasn't cool. Being in the street, doing crazy stuff, that's what to me was considered the cool stuff, and that's what I got drawn into. And once I got drawn into it, I was like wholeheartedly, I was into it 100%. And that's the other thing. I mean, I've always been, whatever I'm involved in, I'm in it. It's not, it's not like I'm halfway doing it. And so when I was in the street and I was in a gang, I was 100%.
So I know you mentioned a little bit about it earlier about your second time around, you ended up going to the Temple. But I believe you actually got your GED while you were actually inside the first time?
Yeah, the first time I got my GED when I was doing the time for the homicide. I got they offered GED classes in there, and I took the GED classes, took the exam, and I was in my cell, and the guy who administered the exam came down to my cell. He's like, "Yo," he said, I said, "Hey, how'd I do?" He said, "Man, he said, not only did you pass, but he said, you got one of the highest grades of anybody that took the test." He said, "And we'd like for you to be the valedictorian of the graduating class." I'm like, "Man, I'm not doing that." And I was like, I ain't doing that. But I talked to some of my crew, some of my boys. They were like, "No, man, you should do that." They were like, "You should definitely do that." And the other thing that convinced me to do it was at the graduation, they would like let you have like a little picnic with your family afterwards. So I'm like, okay, that'll do it for me. And actually, some of my friends, my crew, helped me to write the speech. And I don't remember all of the speech at all, but I do remember the last line of the speech, which was, "Let's not serve time, let's let time serve us." And that was kind of the last line of the speech. And so I did the graduation, and the family came up and had a good time. But that was so getting my GED while I was there was what then allowed me to take the college classes later the next time around.
What role did you think that actually played in your transformation, the education piece?
Everything. I mean, to me, the fact that I was able to get an education while I was there, or at least start my and then complete my education, that made the major difference for me. Without that, I probably would have ended up going back, staying in that cycle. But it was getting an education that really changed my life. And you know, I right now, one of the issues for me is right now, the program that I took advantage of doesn't exist anymore. So if I was there today, I couldn't do what I've done. I couldn't get out and do what I've done because the program doesn't exist. And that's one of the things that I'm kind of trying to put a focus on by telling this story, is like programs like that can work. They absolutely can work. I'm an example of the fact that they can work. And so to me, we need to be supporting more programs that provide opportunities for people to either get an education or learn a skill or something that's going to allow them to change their life and to be able to move in a positive direction once they get out. So to me, for me, it was education, and that was what changed my life. It was the fact that I was able to get an education while I was incarcerated, or at least start to get an education while I was incarcerated. That was what made the difference for me.
So tell us a little bit about that career path after, you know, the incarceration, you know, starting your education, then, you know, receiving your education, upon your release. Tell us about the beginning of that career path.
So my undergraduate degree is my bachelor's degree is in accounting. And so when I was graduating, there was what was called the Big 8 accounting firms. It was like 8 accounting firms. And if you were graduating with an accounting degree, your goal was to work for one of those Big 8 accounting firms. So one of the things I did at colleges, in the last semester, companies come on campus to interview students, to try to recruit students. And I remember, like, coming from the street, coming from the penitentiary, I didn't know anything about the whole interview process. And I was like, you know, I need to figure out how to do this and do it the best I possibly can. So what I did was, initially I took like 4 or 5 interviews with companies that I knew I didn't want to work for. No matter what, I didn't want to work for these companies. But I took the interviews to get the practice, because to me, practice builds confidence, and confidence leads to success. And so to me, I said, okay, if I can get this practice, by the time the companies come on campus that I'm really interested in, I'll be ready. And so, and that was the case. When the companies came on campus that I was interested in, I was killing them, because I knew all the right questions to ask. I knew the answers to the questions that they wanted to hear, because I worked on it and practiced it. And so there was one of the Big 8 accounting firms that I was really interested in. It's called Arthur Anderson at the time. And I had met a brother that worked there, and he was giving me some information. And so I was like, that was my focus, who I wanted. So I went there for the day to interview, like a full day of interviews with a bunch of people during the course of the day. And all day, I'm thinking, should I say something to these folks about my background? Because all they knew is I was about to graduate from Temple University with an accounting degree and with honors. And that's all. So they didn't know anything about my background. So the whole time I'm thinking, like, should I say something? Should I say something? Finally I get to the last guy. He's like the hiring guy. He's the one that's gonna, you know, make the call. And so I sit down with him and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna share my story with this guy. So I start to tell him about my history. And as I'm talking to him, I could see his face changing. I'm like, okay, this ain't gonna go the way I hoped it was gonna go. I could tell by the way his face looked as I was talking to him. And when I got done, he said, wow, that's an amazing story. And I know you're gonna do great. And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out an envelope and he said, you know, I had an offer letter here all ready to give you, but I can't give it to you now. He said, I can't take that chance that something happens down the line. And for me, that was like, okay, I'm not going to share this information with anybody else. If somebody asks or if it comes up, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be dishonest, but I'm not going to volunteer this information. And from that point on, I never shared it with anybody. I ended up going to work for Campbell Soup Company right out of college in an accountant role. Worked at Campbell Soup for 5 years. From there, I went to work for Philadelphia newspapers. They were the company that published the 2 newspapers in Philadelphia. I was the assistant controller there. And then from there, I ended up going to work for Kraft Foods for a little while, worked for them for a couple of years in finance and marketing. And then I got a call from someone I had worked with, and he was with a company called BF at the time. And they owned a company called Janssen. They make swimwear and sportswear, and they're out of Portland, Oregon. And they were, said, hey, we want to interview you for this job. And I didn't even know where Portland was, hardly. The only thing I knew about Portland was the Trailblazers, was being a basketball fan. Other than that, I didn't know anything about Portland. But I'll never forget this. I was sitting on the steps in West Philly with my brother and a bunch of my friends, and I was like, man, I don't know about moving to Portland, man. I don't know nothing about Portland. And one of my friends, his name was Dirk. Dirk said, man, you see that plane going by up there? Yeah. He said, your ass need to be on the next one. He said, if you got an opportunity to get out of here and do something different, you need to take advantage of that. And he was absolutely right. I ended up moving out to Portland, taking a job at Janssen, started there as the controller, and after a couple of years, I actually became the president of the company. I was running the company, and was sitting around with some guys one day. We were talking about how we could grow the business, how we could expand. And one of the thoughts was, we could get into like competition swimwear, like Speedo type stuff that the competitive swimmers wear. And we were talking about it. I was like, Nike's here. Maybe we should talk to them because we know how to make swimwear. They have a brand that's already authentic and athletic. And they're right here in Portland. We're here in Portland. Maybe we should talk to them. Long story short, we ended up doing a deal with Nike to produce Nike swimwear. Through that process, I got to meet some of the folks at Nike, and the guy who was the head of apparel for Nike, went to dinner with him one night, and I left the dinner. I was riding home thinking, man, I feel like I just got interviewed. And sure enough, a week or so later, he called and said, hey, would you ever consider coming to work for Nike? I was like, absolutely. So I started at Nike as the head of apparel in the US. So, and it was about $1 billion business at the time. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And then Michael Jordan was about to retire from the Bulls for the second time. And there was a lot of concern because the formula had been, we designed this cool shoe. We do some advertising with, Spike Lee or Bugs Bunny or somebody. And then Michael Jordan wears that shoe 82 games and into the playoffs. That was the formula of how we were going to sell shoes. And now him not playing, you're taking a big piece of that formula out. And there were a lot of people, both internally and externally, who thought, hey, Michael's retired, it's over at this point. But myself and a few other folks there thought, no, we have the opportunity to continue to build on this. And so I was asked by Phil Knight to put a team together and strategies on how we were going to create this brand out of this logo that was just a logo on Michael Jordan's shoes. And we were able to work it out. Like I said, at the time when we first started, the business was about $140, $150 million that was being sold, just the Air Jordan shoes. This year, the Jordan business is going to be over $5 billion. And the reality is, like I said, a lot of people thought that it wasn't going to be able to go further at all once Michael Jordan retired. So did that for, I was at Nike for like 10 years. So went to a NBA Trailblazer game one night, and they had an area called the Rose Room where sponsors and people could go have dinner before the game. So sitting there having dinner with a couple friends. One worked for the Trailblazers, and the other one ran a nonprofit organization in Portland. We have dinner, and the Blazers had just decided to not re-sign the guy that was the president of the team. And so we're sitting there having dinner, and the guy he's like, man, you should put your name in the hat for that. I was like, man, I don't know nothing about running the NBA team. I know. No, you should. So, and the woman who was with us, who worked for the Blazers, she said, well, why don't you at least meet the guy who is kind of doing the interviews and the one that's doing the hiring. I was like, all right. So I meet this guy. Him and I are supposed to meet for like a drink, and it turned into like a 4-hour dinner. And by the time we were done, I was interested and he was interested. So we kind of went back and forth for another month or so. And I ended up meeting Paul Allen, who was the owner of the team at the time. And they offered me a job. And it was a tough decision for me to leave Nike to go work for the Trailblazers. But I felt like it was an opportunity to show people that look like me, that someone who looks like them could do a job like this, because we hadn't had that in Portland, and there are very few people of color in positions within the NBA, and all of the leagues, across all the leagues. So to me, this was an opportunity to show that, you know, somebody that looks like me could do this. And so that was the main motivating reason why I took the job at the Trailblazers, because Nike came back and offered me to stay. They offered more than, I couldn't have asked for anything more than they offered, but I decided to take the Trailblazer job. And it was an amazing, incredible experience for me. Paul Allen, who was the owner, never went to any of the owners' meetings. So I was at every owners' meeting for 5 years. The negotiating between the players and the owners, you know, to do a new contract. There was a committee on the owner's side of 10 people, and I was the only non-owner that was on that committee. So to me, and I, you know, a lot of times I would be sitting in these meetings and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? You know, how did I get here in this meeting with all these billionaires and owners? But, you know, the reality is, someone asked me this the other day, like, did I ever feel like I didn't belong in some of the meetings and some of the places? And, you know, I had to think about that for a minute, but the reality is I never felt that way, because I always felt like I had earned my way into, nobody gave me anything. I didn't, you know, nobody, you know, just gave me, I felt like I earned where I was, and that I had earned my way to be able to sit in those rooms. But it would be interesting sitting in these rooms with all these billionaires and me. And it's like, but it was an incredible experience. And I worked for the Trailblazers for 5 years. We sold out the arena while I was there every game. We made the playoffs 3 out of the 5 years. We had the #1 pick in the draft one year, and we chose a guy named Greg Oden instead of Kevin Durant. And at the time, Oden was the right guy for us to pick. He was a 7-footer, a center, had great footwork. He was a great player. He just was injured. He never really was able to maximize his career, but we could have taken Kevin Durant instead.
What was your title there when you were in Portland?
I was the president and CEO of the team. And one of the things about most teams, most NBA teams, NFL teams, the people who work on basketball, like the drafts and recruiting and all that, and the business are totally separate. Like the business side works on selling sponsorships, selling tickets, all that. And then the other side works on, you know, putting the team on the floor. But when I went to work there, one of the things that I kind of said I wanted to, demanded, was that I would have responsibility for both. So I was involved in every trade, every draft pick, all that, and also was responsible for ticket sales, sponsorships, all that. So basically, all of it, and then I just reported directly into to Paul Allen as the owner. But it was an incredible experience. But Nike you know, I kept in touch with Nike while the whole time I was there, kept in touch with MJ. And the only thing he told me when I was leaving is, "You'll be back." That was the only thing, "You'll be back." And the whole time I was, you know, stayed in contact with him. They ended up reaching back out and said, "Hey, you know, we'd love for you to come back and run the Jordan brand again. Think, you know, they could need some help, and we think you're the person to do it." So I ended up, after 5 years, going back to Nike and running the Jordan brand again. When I left to go to the Trailblazers, the business was almost at $1 billion. And when I came back 5 years later, it was still at about $1 billion. And then once I got there, you know, kind of helped to implement some things and help to, you know, move things forward. We started to roll. Like I said, this year it's going to be over $5 billion. And about 2 years ago, I moved into a new role. We created an advisory board for the Jordan brand, and I'm the chairman of the advisory board. And we hired somebody to run the day-to-day. So to me, it's great because I get to still be involved, but not responsible for all the day-to-day stuff. So somebody else can handle all that. And so that's kind of a brief overview of my career.
Okay, a few things. I'm just piquing my own interest. I want to go back, like when you said you were implementing the Jordan brand, like the time that he was retiring. How involved was MJ during that?
He was and continues to be very involved in the brand. I mean, so he's part of the advisory board. We meet every quarter and review the business, talk about what's going forward, talk about strategies. But he's been extremely involved and the way he envisions it is the brand is a representation of him. So he wants to make sure that, you know, we're doing things in a way that he's comfortable with and that he agrees with. But no, and he's accessible. I mean, I could call him anytime and be like, "Yo, man, I need to run something by you," or "I got a question for you," or "I need to come see you." And he always made himself accessible for all of us. And you know, like I said, just being involved, he's still heavily involved in the business.
Okay. A prior interview, I know you were saying something about, we do like a basic money management class here that we teach the participants. Part of that is like the marketing aspect of it. And part of marketing is having that target audience. And in one of your prior interviews, I know you mentioned when you all were sitting down with that Jordan brand about having that target audience.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I believe, you know, when it comes to marketing a brand, you have to know who your target consumer is, because all of your focus, everything you do should be focused on how do you connect with, how do you resonate with that consumer. But the first thing is figuring out who your consumer is, and we went through that process, and we determined that it was you know, inner city kid that was you know, baller. He was also the guy that was like the style leader. You know, his peers looked to him for style. He was, you know, that was the kid that we focused on. And I remember I got a call one time from Nike has this group called Hollywood Promo, and their job is to place product in videos, movies, TV shows. And so they called me up one day and said, "Hey," and they said, we just got a call from NSYNC, and NSYNC was hot at the time. They were hot at the time. They said, "We just got a call from NSYNC, and they want to wear, they're going to be performing at halftime at the Super Bowl, and they want to wear Jordan." And we had just gotten started. We were about a year or two in at that time. And I said, "You know what, let me think about that for a little bit. Let me get back to you." And I got my team together and I said, "Hey, here's an opportunity that we have, you know, let's talk about it." And we talked it over, and the team was kind of split. Half the team was saying, "You know, we need to do this, man. It's the Super Bowl. All these eyes are going to see our brand out there. This is great." The other half of the team was saying, "Yeah, but it's NSYNC." They don't connect with our consumer. They don't resonate with our core consumer. And we kind of went back and forth on it, and I had to make the call, and I decided not to do it. And I said, "Hey, you know, NSYNC wants to buy Jordans more power to them, but we're not gonna use them to promote our brand because they don't resonate with our consumer right now. And I think that's part of like branding is understanding and being true to who you are as a brand and making sure that, you know, you do stay focused on that target consumer and that you do, and the things you do are focused on resonating with that consumer, because otherwise, you know, you're gonna miss out on and our thinking was if we got that kid, then everybody else is looking at that kid for style, you know, elements. If we got them, then it would resonate with other people, and that's exactly what happened. That's why we were able to go from the size that we were to now. I mean, everybody wears Jordans. People wear Jordans all the time now. But back then it was like, hey, we want to make sure that we target this consumer because we think they're going to influence other people.
Tell us a little bit about that, about the importance of the decision makers, people being in the room, you know, having that diversity, you know, having that cultural influence, actually making those decisions, you know, in targeting that.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. I mean, you know, if myself or the team had a different perspective, we'd have been like, oh yeah, we want to do this. But it was like, no, we understand what this consumer is looking for. We understand what resonates and what works with this consumer, and this ain't it. So, you know, we were able to and that was a big part of our focus, was to maintain that.
Okay. Who has a tremendous impact on you as a leader?
You know, there are a number of people. I used to read. I don't read as much as I used to, but I used to read a lot. When I was at Camp Hill, or when I was doing the 4.5 for homicide, I got hooked on reading at a certain point. I mean, anytime I wasn't working or sleep or doing, I was reading, and I didn't care what it was. I read novels, I read Westerns, you name it. The library there was very limited. I mean, very, very limited. So I think I probably read most of the books in there, even if I didn't know, if I didn't want to. It was just something to read. And, you know, I think, you know, reading really did enlighten me. It broadened my perspective. I learned a lot of things. Like sometimes now I'll be watching like Jeopardy. I'm like, how the hell do I know that? You know, I must have read it somewhere and it's stuck in my head. You know, what was the question again?
It's really who has had that tremendous impact on you?
So for me, but one of the things I enjoy reading, or I like to read, is I like to read biographies of people who have accomplished things. And I think to me, you know, folks who overcome hardships, folks who overcome obstacles to be successful, that I like to read stories like that. And some of the people that I've been most impressed with are people like Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali, folks who were willing to risk and give up everything for what they believed in. To me, those are the people that inspire me. And I was fortunate enough to meet both Ali and Mandela in my life, which is kind of amazing for me. But to me, like I said, it's people who have overcome things and have been willing to sacrifice for what they believe in, for what's important to them. I mean, you know, Ali was willing to go to jail for what he believed in. Mandela went to jail for 27 years for what he believed in. To me, you know, those are the people that inspire me. People that are willing to do whatever for what they believe in.
That actually goes directly into my next question, and I believe you just answered it, about your inspiration. Like, where do you find it? You know, just in those individuals.
Yeah, no, and there are people that I know who inspire me. There's a guy that I work with at Nike. I've been working with for the time I was there. His name is Howard White, and we call him H White. And H is like somebody that has been inspirational to me. Like, there've been a lot of times I'm dealing with something, I'll go in his office, I'm like, man, and he talks me off the ledge. He'll like, inspire me. And so I think having people like that in your life as well is also important. People that can inspire you, can help you to deal with things that you're dealing with, help you to get through issues. And to me, that's an important part of being able to get yourself together, is having, people or someone that you can really confide in, you can talk about whatever, you can share, things that you're dealing with, share your issues with. To me, that's important, because keeping all that in and trying to deal with everything yourself is hard, it's challenging. But if you have somebody that you feel comfortable talking to, sharing insights with, and you feel it's a safe place to talk to people, I think we all need that in our lives.
I want to go all the way back to go forward. So I want to go through the upbringing, the incarceration, the education, the career path. What would you say are your core values and why?
I think, to me, there's certain things that I try to maintain as far as, who I am. I think being dependable. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, do it. If you're supposed to be somewhere, be there on the time that you're supposed to be there. I mean, those are all things to me that help to make you successful and help you to move forward. I mean, I think being a team player has always been beneficial for me, knowing that, if I'm part of a team, then I'm going to always put the team goals ahead of my individual goals, because I believe that if I'm part of a team and I put the team goals first, my individual goals will come along with that. But if I try to put my individual goals ahead of the team goals, that typically doesn't work, because, at the end of the day, if you're part of a team, but you're focused on your own individual stuff, then you're not really helping the team to move forward. And so to me, I've always been, if I'm part of a team, then I'm gonna make sure that I put the team goals ahead of my individual goals. And then, the other thing that's been important for me and that's really helped me to kind of move forward is family and friends and people that I am connected with, people that I have love for and have support for. That really is something also that I think has been an inspiration to me and has allowed me to kind of move forward.
Dependable. Don't talk about it, be about it. Like that. Jump, your book. Talk about it. What inspired you to write it?
So my daughter, my oldest daughter, I have 4 kids, I have 2 girls, 2 boys. My oldest daughter worked on me for years. Dad, you got a story that you should share with people. Be inspirational to people, it can motivate some people. You need to share this story and let folks know that there's somebody like you out there who's gone through what you've gone through and been able to do the things that you've been able to do. And she worked on me for a lot of years, and I was like, no, because this is a secret. This is something that I don't want to share with anybody. And my concern was that if it got out, that it would ruin everything I had built up to that point. But she worked on me and convinced me eventually that it was something that I should do. And her and I started to work on it together. The other thing that convinced me that I should do this is that I feel like I've been extremely blessed in my life. I've been extremely fortunate, extremely blessed. And I feel like if I didn't share this story, then I wouldn't be showing my gratitude for how blessed I've been in my life and how fortunate I've been in my life. So my daughter worked on me. Finally, I agreed to do it. Her and I would sit down maybe 4 or 5 times a year or so, and we'd spend hours together and her asking questions and me just talking and telling her this story, that story, and she would record it. And then she'd go back and transcribe it. And we did that for probably, it's probably about 7 or 8 years because of my schedule and my reluctance, because I was in no hurry to do this. I was in no hurry to share this story. And so finally, we got to a point where we had like this document, but it wasn't a book. It wasn't a form of a book. So we had the document, and then we reached out and got some help, and folks were able to help us to get it to the format it's in. But it was really her pushing, inspiring me, nudging me, kicking me, pulling me, all those things to get me to do this. And I'm really thankful to her for doing it, because over the years of hiding this and keeping the secret, I had migraines, I had nightmares, I had recurring nightmares. I'd wake up in the middle of the night from a dream that I was going back to jail, or I was back in jail, and I was trying to get out. I mean, this happened on a regular basis, and I think it was all because I was holding all of this in. It was actually physically, it was affecting me physically, the fact that I was keeping this secret in. And once I started sharing with her, it really helped a lot. I mean, the migraine stopped, the nightmares stopped, and I think it was easier for me sharing it with her because, and I said this earlier, but I just tell her, look, hey, you gotta love me no matter what. So no matter what I tell you, you still gotta love me. So I think it was easier for me sharing it with her, knowing that, we had that connection. So we worked on it, and here it is.
So for years working at Nike, for years working at Portland, for years working with the greatest basketball player that ever lived, for those that have any.
All the LeBron fans, I agree with you.
I have that argument every day.
So none of those individuals knew about your criminal history?
No, none of them knew about it. And again, folks have been, the shock and surprise is what people have expressed. But I think, to me, one of the outcomes that I hope came out of this was that they realized that because someone has been previously incarcerated, it doesn't mean that they can't still be a contributor, that they can't still help, they can still have a positive impact on life. And I think a lot of those folks that didn't know, now they're a little more, I think, open to considering connecting or giving somebody a chance, because they look at me and say, well, wow, if he went through that and this is who he is, and then maybe I should give somebody else a chance. And that's another goal that I had coming out of this, that maybe that my story could change people's perception of formerly incarcerated people, and have them be willing to give people an opportunity and give people a chance.
Any challenges or surprises since you had this revelation, had the book come out, and now more people know?
Actually, it's been incredibly inspiring to me. I mean, the support and the encouragement that I've gotten has been extremely encouraging. The one thing that has come out of this for me personally that I think is the most important thing for me personally is that I was able to connect with the family of the young man that I killed and really get forgiveness from his family, which has been amazing for me. That's, if nothing else comes out of this for me personally, that's the most important thing. I met with his family in Philly. My daughter and I met with them, and it was incredible. It was his sister, his older sister, who's still around, and his son and daughter. And it was an emotional meeting. And at the end, they all said, they shared their issues, their concerns, but at the end of it, each one of them said, but I forgive you. And at the end, we actually all hugged. And for me, that was the most important thing that could have come out of this, because I feel like, you know, over the years, I've had to, you know, forgive myself. I mean, I feel like for me, you know, taking the life of a young Black man is like, that's the thing that eats at me every day. You know, when we talk gun violence, I feel like, you know, I was a part of that. And so now, you know, my goal is to try to help curb that as much as possible. But to have, his name was Edward White, to have Mr. White's family forgive me and, you know, accept the fact that, you know, I'm remorseful and sorry for what happened, has been an amazing accomplishment for me coming out of this.
I bet. I bet. What advice will you have for our participants?
I think, you know, to me, the whole focus around, you know, being incarcerated, coming out, I think hope is the key component to me. You can't lose hope. You got to maintain hope in that, you know, you can move forward beyond where, you know, my daughter has a saying that you shouldn't be judged by the worst thing that you've done in your life. You shouldn't be judged for your entire life by the worst thing that you committed in life. And I think accepting or acknowledging and believing that you can change your life and that you can do something different and you can break out of that cycle, because I know it because I was in that cycle. It was, you know, I was telling people, like, I grew up, like I said, I was 12, 13, I started going to jail. Every time I go back, it'd be the same people there. You know, be the same guys. Yo, what's up? There were guys that I was really close with that I never saw them in the street. It was only when I go back to jail, they're there, I'm there. We kind of grew up together. And to me, you know, to break that cycle, you have to really believe that you can. You have to really say, you know what? I believe that I can change this cycle. I believe that I can, you know, do something different with my life. And it's obvious, like, organizations like this are here to help, you know, so to me, take advantage of the opportunities and the things that organizations like Concordance can provide to give you that opportunity to change your life and to move forward. And again, you know, never lose that hope, because to me, that's what's going to keep you motivated and keep you moving forward. And again, I think everybody in here is an example of the fact that you could change life. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? If you weren't trying to change your life, if you weren't trying to do something right, if you weren't trying to move forward, you wouldn't be here. You'd be out in the street, you'd be somewhere else. But to me, the fact that you're here says that you want to and believe that you can change your life. And I think, you know, to me, I would just encourage you to keep moving forward and to keep believing that you can change and that you can move forward and take your life in a different direction.
We work daily to alter that stigma, to change that stigma. That unfortunately a lot of our participants have, because people just come out with that, you know, we're human beings, we come out with this mindset that I do have this record, that I'm unable to do this, I'm unable to do that. But that's why we have that morning circle in the morning, and that's why we applaud you all for showing up, you know, each day. Because getting here is half the battle. It does show that you're willing to change. It does, you know, that is that right step. I was actually going through some of the questions that we had, and that was kind of one of them about advice, you know, advice that you have when somebody is released from prison. And I think you kind of answered that, you know, taking advantage of what's being offered to you, you know, showing up to places like Concordance. There was another question that was in there, and it asks, what are you most looking forward to?
That's a good question. Probably some rest and relaxation. But no, I'm hoping that that, you know, this story can have a positive impact on as many people as possible. I mean, that's the goal for me. That's why we did it. That's why I've been, you know, talking to different people and, you know, moving around and trying to share the story with as many people as possible, because, you know, my hope is that it can have a positive impact, that it can, you know, impact people who are currently incarcerated and maybe inspire them to start trying to do some positive things while they're incarcerated, inspire people that are, you know, formerly incarcerated to, you know, maybe look at and start to believe that they can do positive things with their life and to take advantage of opportunities. People who maybe have never been connected with the criminal justice system at all, but maybe change their perspective on and their perception of people who have been incarcerated. If they look at me or they hear my story and say, well, hey, if this guy is able to do it, maybe there are other people and I should help some of these other folks that, you know, they might be. And then, you know, the other thing that I'm hoping is that, you know, there's a 16-year-old Larry Miller out there about to do something stupid or something that they'll regret probably for the rest of their life. And maybe hearing this story might make them stop or at least give a second thought, or at least, you know, maybe hesitate a little bit before going and doing something stupid. So, you know, to me, I hope that, you know, this can have the kind of impact that my daughter and I hoped we could have when we did this.
The power of influence. I know I talk about that a lot, you know, especially being here about the importance of the influence that we have on others, and that the influence that others have on us, that is there. It truly is. The other question that we had, I believe this was the last one that we had, and I think we might have touched on it, but I do want to answer it because somebody took the time to write it out, and it was, what was the hardest thing to overcome with having the criminal record? And I think you probably kind of touched on that a little earlier.
Yeah, no, I go back to, you know, sharing the story with the guy at the accounting firm, and realizing at that point that, you know, I'm probably not going to be able to accomplish what I'm trying to if folks know my story. So for me, I'm just going to try to keep it as quiet as I possibly can. When I first started at Campbell Soup, that was the first job out of college. And the question on the application said, have you been convicted of a crime in the last 5 years? And I was like, no, it had been longer than 5 years. So I was able to truthfully answer that question. But that's one of the things that we've been talking a lot about. Should a question like that even be on an application? Because a question on an application asking someone about their criminal past automatically bias against that person, right? And so to me, and I know there's a movement now to ban that kind of question from applications. But for me, because it said 5 years, I was able to truthfully answer that question and move forward. But again, I think that's one of the things that hinders a lot of folks from being able to move forward and to get gainful employment. I mean, employment that is that's desirable.
Well, Mr. Miller, I truly appreciate it. Your story is very inspiring. Your story provides hope. Your story provides motivation to me personally, and hopefully it definitely touched some of our participants and our team members. We'd like to hear from you. Does anybody have a question? Miss Sherry.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. You said something that was very instrumental to me about your circle, the people that you surround yourself with. Myself, coming from being incarcerated, people that knew me, I really only had 2 people, solid people around me. My group didn't add up to 5. That was very important to me. I knew people, but that helped me And I think I was sharing this with somebody else, and I heard somebody else say, if the people in your circle don't inspire, Nipsey Russell, thank you, Lord. It was Nipsey Russell that's, Nipsey Hussle. Y'all know who I was talking about. I just wanted to see if you know. But anyway, and that is so instrumental to me, because I am the type of person coming, you kind of touched on so much, basically, somewhat is me. But for me, when you have, I just like solid people around me. And what I mean by solid people, if you're not the influence, and it's not about the money, the money game, it's about what nugget or inspiration that you can give me. And it seems like I gravitate to those type of people. I'm just the type of person, if I see that you on some, you know what, I'm like, no good. So, but it was just, you have just really, I was just like so engaged, and you have helped me even the more. Cause at first I'm like, this dude's about basketball. I don't know if it's gonna draw my attention. I'm not a basketball fan, let me tell you. Baseball and football is my thing. But you have said so many instrumental things. It has just really kind of, if it wasn't for this program, for me, I don't think that I would have stayed the course. Not that I was a street person, but I don't think that I would have kept going. I'm an older girl, but anyway, it has had, I've had some highs and some lows of being released. I haven't even been out a full year yet. I've only been out 9 months as of today. But in that process, I've had some struggles. But when you stay the course, I stayed the course, so I see the process and the progress. Right. And I'm at a stage right now that I can't let nothing and nobody, I don't care who your family, anybody else, like, distractions. And so for you, you have just basically, for me today, put the icing on the cake. I have a friend right now, she just got her doctorate degree, she's in a coma, but she has been very instrumental to me because she's feeding me. And I had a friend today tell me, I'm proud of you to see what you're doing. So when I get through her today, girl, let me tell you what I heard today. So that just has placed me in a place to know that if it's dead weight, I gotta drop you. Cause just like I'm wearing this shirt, I ain't gonna wear nothing that's gonna weigh me down. And see, that's what you did. You wasn't gonna allow anything to weigh you down. But when you said it released you, and I think when you can actually say a thing, that's where the healing comes in play. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I mean, your comments really kind of validate why I did this, because to me, to hear you say that this story inspires you or helps you to kind of stay focused and stay on the right track, that's the whole purpose for doing this, is to try to inspire people, to motivate people, and to hopefully, help somebody either get on or stay on track. And so thank you, because you just, I'm going to tell my daughter that you said this, and she's going to be blown away, because she's the one who she really is like focused on the impact that this story is having on people. So every time I talk to somebody, or I hear somebody say that it impacted them, it inspired them, I'll call her and say, yo, somebody else is. She's like, oh, that's great, man. So I'm definitely going to tell her that you were inspired by our story.
Absolutely, and thank you so very much.
Thank you.
What you got, John?
You know how you said you didn't expose your criminal record and history. Was it through the book, or and it started getting exposed?
It was definitely through the book. I mean, I shared with some folks when I knew the book was coming, because there were people that I wanted to make sure they heard it from me versus they heard it somewhere else. Right. People that I feel close to, but they didn't know this story, even though I was close to them. They didn't know, and so I had a list of people, like, I'm going to make sure I connect with these people before it becomes public.
The reason I ask is because one thing Concordance has done for a lot of us is they help us get quality jobs. I mean, I'm working at Barnes Hospital around, sometimes doctors and I always say, hey, I'm just in a program. I kind of use that as my shield up and saying, you know what I mean? Because I've always kind of held that criminal record. I don't want people to think, any different of me. So, I got, I very encouraged to where it's like, you can't run from your past because it's always going to be there, and I was just wondering, how people took it afterwards, because it's one shield I want to bring down, because I want to go forward with my job, and they're quality jobs that they give us. They do a real good job with that. So I was just really wondering, like, what advice can you give to us about, how to kind of take it slowly, or, is there anything that we should know to, when we do start having to expose the past a little bit?
Well, for 40 years, I kind of hid this or tried to hide it or thought I was hiding it. And for the most part, I was. But what I discovered is that people who know me now know me who I am today. They don't know who I was then. They know me as who I am today. And and for a lot of them, it's almost unbelievable to them that I was that guy from before, because they know the person that I am today. And I think when they found out, a lot of them, it was surprise, it was shock, but it was like, wow, like I had the commissioner of the NBA, and I know you don't like basketball. Commissioner of the NBA, name is Adam Silver. I shared with Adam before it went public because he's a friend, someone that I've known. And he said, wow, he said, I've had the utmost respect for you over the years, just from working together. And now hearing your story, I've got even more respect to know where you came from and the things that you had to overcome to get to where you are. So
Absolutely.
that I think that was the reaction. I think once people, they know who you are today, they know what you do today, they know you're someone that, comes to work, dependable, all that, that's who they are going to connect with. And I think finding out what your past is, it'll probably, like I said, for me and for them, they'll probably make them have even more respect for you. Because, I was talking to someone not too long ago about this woman who I worked with her. Her husband comes from, great family. Well, and her family was not so great. She said her dad was in and out of jail. She had to work to pay for school and had to help pay the rent and all that. And she said she was always ashamed of her. She was always ashamed because her husband's family was so much, had so much more going on. And we were talking about that, and I was like, you know what? There's no shame in overcoming obstacles. The shame is in not overcoming the obstacles. And I said, to her, I said, look, you overcame all these obstacles to be who you are and accomplish what you are today. There's no shame in that. But for some reason, we feel shame in the obstacles that we had to overcome. To me, like I said, the shame is if you don't overcome those obstacles. But you obviously have overcome obstacles that there's no shame in that.
One more quick question. You need a personal chef?
What I will say to that too, John, eliminating that past and with having that foot in the door, that quality of work is actually going to speak to that well, to where that's not going to matter. Mr. Austin, you had a question.
Just to get like some insight on how you think, I guess, but how do you personally measure success, and like what were you striving for? How do you personally measure success?
Measure success. How do you measure success?
And then how were you, like, what were you chasing and striving for the whole process? It's interesting because I never chased money. That was never my focus. It wasn't about chasing money or chasing, financial success. It was about accomplishing something that I could feel proud of and feel good about, and that family and friends and people could feel good about. And I always believe that if I focus on that, the money will come. If I focus on doing the right thing, trying to, accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish and doing the best that I could possibly do at whatever the task is, giving it my all, giving it my best. I always believe that the money will come, and it came along okay. The money part came okay, but to me, that was never my focus. I never focused on, hey, I gotta make this amount, I gotta make this. I gotta do my best, and if I do my best, what's next will come, and if I do my best there, and with that, the financial rewards will come with that. But I always focused on doing the best that I could possibly do at whatever the task, whatever the job is, making sure that, I'm giving it what I can give it, and that I'm contributing the best that I can, and that I'm trying to, make it the best that I possibly can. And I always believe that the financial part, because I believe if you chase money, it'll lead you to do some things that you might not want to do, or that you probably shouldn't do, because I think it distorts your perspective, because it becomes all about money. And to me, it's not all about money. It's about relationships. It's about helping people. It's about, accomplishing some goals and things that you set for yourself. And I, like I said, I believe if you take that approach, that the money will come. But I think if you chase money, it's going to lead you down a path that you might not want to be there. And not to say that the money ain't good, because I enjoy all the fruits of my labor. I enjoy that. I enjoy the fact that, I live a pretty decent life right now. But that wasn't what I was chasing as I kind of built my success. I was more looking at, and for me, I was like, one of the things I enjoy is being part of a team that comes up with an idea or a plan, or, this, and then to see that actually become reality. To me, that's like, it doesn't get any better than that. And to me, money will come with that. But for me, it's always been about, about that much more so than the money.
Demetrius, and then I'm gonna go to Mr. Henry. Dan.
How you doing? I just wanted to say that I am very inspired by your story. And I did hear you tell us to never lose hope. And Barack Obama is one of my favorite people, and he said to keep hope alive. So I appreciate that. But I did have a quick question. I wanted to know, how did you come up with the title "Jump" for your book?
Somebody else has that too. My daughter actually came up with that title, and I think she was looking at it like from the perspective of, jumping, whatever, either jumping over obstacles or jumping to get higher. But she was the one who came up with the word "jump," and it started out as kind of a working title for us. And as we kind of got going, and we're like, well, what do we really want to call this? I'm like, I'm happy with this. And so, but then we worked on coming up with kind of the subtitle, "My Secret Journey from the Street to the Boardroom." But she was the one who actually came up with the title "Jump."
Mr. Miller, great story, great story. One question. You spoke about being at an early age, being in a game, and you were all in. And it's something that we talk to our participants about a lot, about changing people, places, and things. At what point in your life did you decide that, I'm gonna get somewhere, and being in that crew that you had, when did you decide to put that crew aside? Because I know you probably made enemies when you decided to say, I got to do something different now.
What's interesting is that the crew, my crew basically was supportive. I remember though, there was one event that really kind of stuck with me. So even after I got out of college and was working at Campbell Soup, every day I would leave work, and before I go home, I would stop in the hood. I'd go hang out with the crew and be on the corner and, find out what's going on. And when I was incarcerated the last time, there was a brother there that was pretty well known in Philly in terms of in the whole underworld deal, right? And I got to know him pretty well. So a couple of my friends were like, man, we want to, his name is Jabbar. We want to, can you hook us up with Jabbar? We want to try to, we want to try to make something happen. So I was like, all right, so I take them down. He was in North Philly. I ride down with them and we go in and in the pool room, we go in the pool room. And as they were starting to talk, and I was like, you know what? I don't belong here anymore. Something just felt like I don't belong. So I was like, you know what? I'll wait for y'all outside. And I walked out and I waited for them. They discussed whatever business they had. And at that point, I knew I was like, this ain't my life anymore. And the one thing that I also know is that in that world, if you ain't all the way in, you can't be half in, half out. 'Cause that's a recipe for disaster.
Sure is.
So I at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm totally done with this. I'm totally done. But I was still straddling the fence for a little while, like, and could have gone either way. But again, I had my degree, I'm working at Campbell Soup Company, but I'm still going down and hanging out and straddling the fence. And it was, like I said, it was that particular meeting that I was like, I'm done with this. This is not who I am anymore. And from that point on, I never looked back.
Cool. Thank you.
Tim, you had something?
I'm just curious. First of all, I was born in Philadelphia, so that's where all my family lives. But I was curious about this.
And your daughter was right. Your daughter was right.
About the night.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm curious about this, how you kept this about prison. It's a little harder for me, obviously, but it like me looking for a home, I was just trying to get a house and they just denied me because of my criminal background. They can just run it now.
Yeah.
It isn't as easy anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
What kind of advice would you give for, I'm just, and that's all, I'm super positive coming out, you know what I mean? And there's a little of that criminal background thing is my big hurdle.
No,
You know what I mean?
and I think, that's something that we're gonna have to continue to try to work on and continue to try to address, because that shouldn't be a hindrance to you. If you have the income and the ability and all that to be able to buy a house, why should the fact that you have a criminal record stop you from being able to do that? And I think you just need to, don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Just keep working, and eventually it'll happen. Eventually, you'll be able to figure it out, but don't give up. That's what I would say. Just keep focusing. That's what if that's one of your goals and something you want to accomplish, don't let that stop you from continuing to push forward to accomplish that goal. Because if you do that, I believe you'll definitely be able to make it happen.
Well, Mr. Connor.
I just meet you, and like your list of people that influenced you.
Say it again.
The list of people that influenced you.
Mhm.
Muhammad Ali and Nelson Mandela. But I wanted to ask, when I was in the 6th grade, it was this website that we used to get on when you can customize like your own Air Force. And I just want to know, have y'all ever went into y'all archives or anything like that and use some of those ideas as
Ideas from people that, I didn't quite get the
I
question.
think he's
it was a website that we used to be able to get on after we did our work,
Okay.
and we like customize our own Air Force.
Okay, oh, yeah, oh, Air Force
They
One.
let you
Yeah,
do the
yeah.
it's-
You
it's
know,
like, right.
so that customization was so that you could order those.
So you can order, but we was kids, so.
Yeah. But, so the way that worked, that customization was only for you. Like, if you do that customization and then you order them, you're the only one who could get those shoes. So we didn't take those designs and then say like, oh, we're gonna take this and we're gonna make fun of that. No, that was customization for you so that you could feel like you had special shoes that only you had. And that was the whole idea behind the customization. So we never then took those ideas and we like, oh yeah, let's go make these. No, we didn't do that. We didn't do that. Now, some of them might have showed up just because they came. Some of them might have showed up really similar or something. You know? Little tweak here and there, but no.
Mr. Brendan, what you got?
It's not really a question, but a request. Sitting here listening to you, your Midwestern accent is very good. But I hear some of that Philly come through every once in a while. How do you pronounce water?
Really, you say water. Philly, we have some of our, well, every city does. Every city has their own little.
I don't mind him anyway, he's from Illinois.
Pastor John?
We spoke earlier, you mentioned how important it is to stay connected with purpose as a team. Has that articulation of your purpose changed through your striving over the decades, or has it stayed the same?
It's pretty much stayed the same, but it's just taken on different forms over the years. As I've progressed in my career, I've been able to do more in terms of giving back and the things that are important to me. I tell people all the time, like, if you, I feel like the higher you move up in your career, the more opportunity you have to give back. Like with the Jordan brand, we started a program probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, where we provide full free ride scholarships to kids who go through. We work with organizations that work with young people in different cities, and then they recommend kids that have gone through their program for scholarships. Because it started out, I was meeting with a guy who owned a number of retail stores, and we're in Philly, a place called Villa. It used to be called Sneaker Villa, it's now Villa, but I was meeting with the owner there, and we were talking about the fact that a lot of young people are so into the whole Jordans and Jordan brand and Jordan shoes. How do we use that to motivate them in a positive way? And so we came up with this program it was called A's for Days. And basically through that store, we worked with 3 high schools in Philadelphia, and kids could earn credits towards Jordan product in that store by grades, attendance, improvement in grades, all those things. And so we had that program, and myself and a couple other people were sitting around one time, and we were just like, okay, well, what happens? These are all kids that were, going up to high school. It's like, what happens to these kids once they're done high school? And we realized that a lot of them had the ability, the desire, but they didn't have the financial wherewithal to be able to go to college, or to even, go to a school to learn a trade or get a skill. And so we started a program to do that. And every year we bring on 40 or so new kids that come into the program, full free ride, any school, any college, any training program that they want to go to. If they want to go to Harvard, we'll pay for that all 4 years. If they want to go to barber school, we'll pay for that. And so we started that program 5 or 6 years ago. And now hundreds of kids have gone through the program. We've got actually in the process of hiring some of the kids at Nike who went through that program. But for me, like personally, I couldn't afford to pay for those kids to go to school. I don't have it like that. But the company could, and through my job, I was able to direct that program or make that program happen through my position at work. And to me, I think that's what I mean in terms of the higher you go, the more success you have, I think the more opportunity it is to give back. I heard a woman say something one time. She said her mother used to tell her that she needed to learn more so she could earn more, so she could return more. And that always stuck with me. And so to me, I feel like like I said, the more you advance, the more opportunity it is to give back. And I'm really proud of what the Jordan brand has accomplished in sales and all that. But I'm more proud of the lives that we've affected by programs like that, because we've from day one in starting the brand, one of the things that we made sure we built into whatever we did was an opportunity to give back. And from the very beginning, and that's grown and grown over the years. The bigger the brands got, the more we give back. And, but to me, that's part of the process. It's like, as you move forward, you have to figure out how you can also give back.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank you, and I would ask that everybody else join in giving